What if ASEAN comes together, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, come together, and Philippines, and then we have a chance now. And not only a chance, we have a chance to help grow the industry globally also. Semiconductor is part of my life now.
Sure.
Being in SSIA, it just extends the passion from manufacturing into now the reality of trying to grow the industry from a nation standpoint, from a regional and global standpoint. It did not start by accident. I think it is something that was well planned all the way back to Lee Kuan Yew and the founding fathers of Singapore. Today, we are seeing uptick in terms of student interest wanting to do microelectronics. We are seeing an uptick in students wanting to do IC design. And it's not just by certain percentage, it's almost doubled in the universities. From SSIA standpoint, we are actually neutral to all. I mean, we still speak to our friend in China. I just met up with my friends from the embassy, US embassy last week. We are still close to them. When they have delegation, we still host them, we still talk to them. And we remain that way. We are not, manufacturing any sensitive items. We make sure we comply with what the US needs in terms of the export control. So from FDI standpoint of view, Singapore is very focused on this thing called the Advanced Manufacturing 2030. So we have a roadmap for that where we are trying to put frontier investment in the space of advanced manufacturing. And semiconductor is at the front of everything. Singapore is the center of trading hub and everything else where we attract FDIs. So we need to be real when we talk about sustainability. From an industry standpoint, I'll make Singapore the most major hub of semiconductor industry, but not because it is for the economy only, but it's because we have the ability now to help the others rise up together globally and ultimately for the betterment of mankind. Tariff is definitely, to me, a threat to open concept of global business. It's definitely not a positive way of doing it. But we understand. We understand why the Americans are doing it.
I really believe that the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a whole change of people, of leaders. Everyone's changed. Everyone's retiring. Everyone's leaving jobs. And I'm like pondering in my head, who's going to replace these individuals?
Join us in welcoming Wee Seng Ang, the Executive Director of the Singapore Semiconductor Industry Association.
A visionary leader with extensive experience, Ang is shaping the future of semiconductors in Singapore and beyond. His unique perspective on industry trends and challenges will surely captivate you.
Prepare to uncover the secrets behind this vital sector. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome back to the Semiconductor Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Salah Nasri, and it is with absolute great pleasure to say that this is being shot live and direct here in Singapore. So whether you're an industry veteran or you're just someone that's just curious about the semiconductor manufacturing industry, this is your podcast. We'll be covering the latest in cutting-edge R&D, leadership strategies, and market trends from the very best minds in the industry. But before I start this discussion, I need a small favor from you. Yes, you. Press that subscribe button on YouTube or Spotify. The more followers that we get, the more interesting this podcast will become. Today's special guest is none other than Wee Seng, who's the Executive Director of SSIA, which is the Singapore Semiconductor Industry Association. Not only is Executive Director, but he's also a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of many out there in the industry. He has done an absolute remarkable job and effort with SSIA. It is truly an association that I look up to. It's a benchmark to an extent, and the efforts that he has done is just truly profound. So without further ado, let's dive into the discussion. Wee Seng, welcome to the show.
And welcome to Singapore.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And thank you for such a wonderful introduction.
That is my pleasure, Wee Seng. No, it's my pleasure. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're saying credit is due when it's due. And you have done an absolute remarkable effort. You cover, workforce development, business development, government policies, and etc. And, if I had that capability to replicate all of that around the world, just 50% of the effort you do, it's remarkable. So my question is how do you do it? I mean, what motivates you? What drives you to do this?
So one key word that always, go into my mind when I doing what I'm doing now in SSIA is really about passion. Just that one passion extended from my past life, from the manufacturing of semiconductor, being in this industry for more than 2 decades, extending that to now SSIA. That passion is what drives me, to now grow the industry, not just from Singapore's standpoint, but regionally and also globally.
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that from such a small country, but how fast it's developed, and also with semiconductor manufacturing as well. Singapore wasn't that great in semiconductor manufacturing. How did that happen? And could you give us like a historical background on how this?
Maybe some brief history on this. So it did not start by accident. I think it is something that was well planned all the way back to Lee Kuan Yew and the founding fathers of Singapore. So the industry started in 1968. And, it started off in the early days, down the value chain. It was in the packaging, the testing side. Over the decades, that has moved up the value chain. In the mid-80s, we are into the foundries. So the very likes of Chartered Semiconductor. Then we start to move into R&D in 2000s, in the early mid-90s. And today, we are basically covered the entire ecosystem with an industry that covers close to 8% of the national GDP. And we are exporting sales of at least 11% of the global semiconductor market. So it's a pretty sizable, sales in an island as small as Singapore.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting. It's like, big things come in small packages, as they say, right? But, you look at Taiwan as well. It's another island, a small, tiny island,
Exactly.
which is the backbone to the whole ecosystem. Where do you see like the chokeholds in Singapore for the semiconductor manufacturing? Where's the bottlenecks?
I think the challenges has always been the talent pool, among many of the other challenges that the industry do face. But talent pool has always been a challenge, not just in Singapore, but globally for this sector. Skilled workforce is something that we need more of as the industry expands into the decades. And that remains a challenge for Singapore, this region. And also, I'm very sure globally. Yeah.
And one thing when I was doing my analysis of the region, or let's say one can say due diligence, is there a reason? I mean, you look at Taiwan, for example. There's a lot of homegrown companies out of Taiwan. How come that's not replicated here in Singapore?
Unfortunately, we do have some wonderful homegrown, but they are no more at home in terms of the ownership.
Yeah.
But it is something we are still working towards too. We are looking for that one, the few local champion that we could, hopefully build up one day into the future. We have close relationship with the research group, trying to get technologies into manufacturability. But you are right. That's something that I have to say is the dark side of the Singapore story. It is unfortunate loss that we have. But with the thriving ecosystem that we are seeing, I'm very confident that
It's going to happen.
future champion must happen. It has to happen. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the industry that we're in. One day you could be number one, and you can end up being number 10. Things change very fast, and it's an innovation at the end of the day, right? So on the positive forefront, Singapore has attracted the high margin type of business per se. When you look at the kind of neighboring regions, they're more focused on as you mentioned, the assembly and test. Why and how has Singapore been so successful in that? Yeah?
I think if you look holistically from a Singapore aspect, there are several factors that really help us in this. Right, first and foremost is our political background. It is stable. It's been there. And we work very closely between the government, the companies, and the labor movement. So the tripartite movement also is there. And also the laws that govern, the policies that helps the industry, the support that the government is giving. I believe that is also, one of the factors. But in the most recent years, with SSIA coming on board, uniting the companies, having the industry, helping the industry with the support for government, to me, that's also one key ingredient to attract, a very stable industry growth that we are seeing in Singapore.
So do you see, so basically SSIA is acting as a bridge between industry and government. Is that right to say?
Industry, government, and the supporting partners in this space.
Okay.
And in most recent years, even our partners from overseas, from regional state also, yeah.
Interesting. So tell us more about the history of SSIA. Like, how did it come into creation? And where is that right now?
So before I start, here's one secret that we have not officially announced to the public yet, but we're going to announce it soon. And I'm going to give...
Oh, you're going to give it out?
So this year...
Hold on, let me get this drum roll ready.
This year is our 20th anniversary, and we're going to have a celebration later part of the year.
Oh, wow.
I think at the dinner. So it started in 2005 under the name of Midas. So it was a group of microelectronics and IC designers that came together, a small group. And they believed that they wanted to bring some level of unity among the companies, the research institution and the universities to really grow the semicon, more specifically in the IC design space. But in 2010, the same group decided that we should go throughout the ecosystem now. Semicon is just not about IC design, it's not just about one sector, it's across the sectors. So that's why they converted the name to Singapore Semiconductor Industry Association, and we now represent a wider group of sectors, not just in the IC design space, but in manufacturing, chemical material, in fact, the whole whole 9 years of the ecosystem, yeah. So that continues until in 2018. So here's a funny story then. So myself, I'm actually from the industry, from Chartered and then Global Foundries for many years. 2018, this name called SSIA came about. So my ex-boss, Wee Seng Ang, called me out and said, we need a help to, do a transformation for SSIA to help transform the industry eventually. So when I first heard about SSIA, now having been in the industry for more than 20 years, SSIA thought, why would you ask me to, go into Singapore Airlines, SIA? Never heard of SSIA. So I went in, I realized this is a story beyond just Singapore.
Yes.
It is a story for the industry, but most importantly, by the industry. So back then, Singapore government wrote this thing out called the Industry Transformation Map. It is a transformation strategy for all 21 sectors in Singapore. SSIA was chosen to represent the electronic sector. So we focus on improving the productivity, improving the innovation for the industry, but more importantly, to grow the workforce. These are the 3 ingredients we believe that will help grow the industry overall. But here's the twist of it. It has to be driven by the industry, for the industry, with the support from the government. So to do that, you get a neutral party like Chamber of Commerce or trade association. The only challenge is that SSIA back then was a very small trade association. And we needed the government to come in to support. So I came in, rewrote the constitution, reinstate new board members. Back then, fast forward 6 years down the road, here we are.
Wow.
And we still continue that journey, yeah.
And I believe that it has grown significantly.
In terms of the network, absolutely. But I think more importantly is the outcome. So like I mentioned earlier, indicators of what things has improved. Growing the workforce is one key indicator. Today, we are seeing uptick in terms of student interest wanting to do microelectronics. We are seeing an uptick in students wanting to do IC design. And it's not just by certain percentage, it's almost doubled in the universities. We are addressing the most important problem of all time, the workforce. So we're starting to see that. Of course, this is not just an SSIA effort. It's actually the company stepping up to take this together as a united front. Yeah.
What methodologies are you doing to do this?
Mm-hmm. So the strategy is very simple. First, unite the company with a common mission. So let's take workforce as an example. The common mission here is to grow the workforce. So the companies come together. Then the next thing is to create platforms that we could create awareness about the industry, platforms where we can engage the students. In most recent years, we are focusing even on mentorship, where industry leaders now step out to mentor the students who are interested to build a career in our industry. So there are a lot of fine prints that go into this, but end of the day, the collective action of the companies, the industry, of course with the support from the government, not to forget that, really help to boost the interest of the students wanting to come to the industry. Yeah.
But how is the government doing it, or how are you guys doing it with the government? I mean, what methodologies, what type, how are you reaching out to these students?
So government, multiple agencies that is there to help. Short term, for example, government do acknowledge the fact that we have shortages of certain talent skill set. So, they support the companies in bringing such foreign talents in. But mid to long term, the government is collaborating with us to make sure that we have sufficient support to go into the secondary school. Not just, the 18, 19-year-old that's going to university. We're targeting students as young as 15 to 16-year-old. Share with them, not just semicon specifically, but STEM as a whole. Make sure that they understand what are the opportunities building a career in STEM through semiconductor. Open the eyes, not just the students, but the parents, the teachers. And these are all collaboration that we work with the various agencies, like, for example, JTC, what we call the largest landlord of Singapore. You'll be surprised they're one of our partner to develop one of the largest student outreach program in Singapore. And that happened a few days back. It's called the Electronics Industry Day. And what we do is we have 34 over companies coming in at ITE Central, and we showcase the semicon industry to the students. 2,000 over students. So these are just an example of how government support in that sense. Yeah.
What's in it for a company like JDC to get involved?
So in a very simplistic form, when you have the workforce, the so-called human capital address, investment will come in. When investment come in, they need land, they need the building. JTC,
I see.
It's a very holistic picture where the agencies themselves are partnering, and they're trying to cultivate and build a community rather than just one and individual companies.
So how do you guys, you and the government or JDC or whatnot, how do you make it attractive for these students to come in? Are there incentives in place, any promises that you give them, or what is it?
The most important ingredient is showcase everything from end to end in the semicon industry. So traditionally, when you talk about semiconductor, the first thing you talk about is manufacturing. And when you talk about manufacturing, the next thing you talk about is let's smoke out in a clean room environment. The ladies will look at it, okay, too harsh an environment, they run. So what we've been doing the past 6 years is to really showcase the entire ecosystem, what it looks like in terms of advanced manufacturing. And this is, we're selling intelligent manufacturing. How do we do predictive maintenance? And that's just from the manufacturing context. And what's the whole chain of semicon? We're looking at, say, IC design. What does IC design entails? And then even if you want to communicate about the ecosystem of semicon, we don't just say, now we are producing AI chip. What's the impact of producing AI chip to the environment? How can you, as a student, come in and guess what? You can champion sustainability to semiconductor. So this is a whole chain of communication we give to them. And as a student, I'm confident they come out and realize, you know what? There's just a slew of opportunities in semiconductor now. It's not just manufacturing, it's everything. Yeah.
Fair. Of course, one of the core questions that one needs to ask is if we look at Wee Seng, his career, what got you into semiconductor manufacturing? How did you get into that? Because surely that'll be the message that, because I know there's a bunch of other Wee Sengs out there.
Good point.
So how did you get into it?
So here's a funny story. It was over a bet. Is it over what? It was over a bet.
A bet? Okay.
So in the way the Singapore University does it, the first year is what we call generic engineering. So we learn anything, everything engineering. Second year onwards, we specialize in either electrical electronics, civil or mechanical. I went into electrical electronics. In the final year, that's where you need to specialize in either computing, microelectronics, so on and so forth. So at that point, the bet is for me to go into the rocket science of microelectronics, of EEE, which is microelectronics. This is where we talk about starting and stopping electrons. This is when very likely you fail most of your exams. And in the cohort of 200 students, typically we get about 30 students that goes into microelectronics only. These are the crazy ones. These are the ones who probably have no life. I took out a challenge, and guess what? I got in. It was under a scholarship from Chartered Semiconductor also. They kind of sponsored my final year in the university. Upon graduation, I joined them. And the funny thing is, as soon as I joined them, they shipped me to overseas because we were running a virtual fab globally. This was the start of the 12-inch wafer for Chartered back then. So we were running there, and I still remember it was only 8 months in the job. One of my bosses was telling me, you know what? Comb your hair, wear the jacket, and say you're 8 years in the industry. That's it. Really? Literally throw me in the water and say swim. But man, the learning that I got from the industry, from the company, is tremendous. I wouldn't change this for anything else. If I had to go back in time, I'll go through this again. Yeah.
Wow. So from Chartered, where did you go after?
nowhere else. Chartered
Just,
all the way through until Chartered went into Global Foundries.
Yeah.
I stayed on in Global Foundries. I was even in Dresden. I was
Dresden.
in New York, and then I came back. So I was every other 2 to 3 years, my role would change to support this and everything else. So I kind of, in a way, fortunate. I cycled through the entire loop of semicon manufacturing. Yeah.
I see. Now, the shift into an industry association was something that we do as a similar job per se. Do you miss the fab world?
So, yeah.
Or are you are you happy where you are? Is there like a...
So, a quick answer to that is anybody from the fab world will tell you we will definitely miss the fab world, definitely miss operation. But the beauty for my case is that prior to coming to SSIA, I had a 3 years transition out of operations into supply procurement. So I was in the space of procurement before that, and that kind of tapered off before I got into SSIA. But I still remember the year at least leaving operations. I will wake up in the middle of the night looking at my message. It's like, okay, there's no SMS, there's no messages coming out about any excursion. I used to work 7 days a week. Suddenly it's just 5 days a week. And I used to pop a high blood pressure pill.
Oh,
that's how we used to work. I can tell you. So everything about that I miss. But then you reflect back today, that was what shaped me to be what I am today. The most difficult things that we face today is nothing compared to the pressure we used to get where every minute, the excursion happens, it costs millions of dollars to the company.
Wow.
I remember there were days where we sat down and discussed, what do we do with these 1,800 wafers that gone through this tool that has possibility of an issue? We stare and we calculate with our hands. Okay, that's just a few million that we can't fit into our hands.
Oh my God, wow.
But that was a life. That was a lifestyle of it. Of course, midway through, I have gone through multiple midlife crises and things changed throughout my life. But those were things that really shaped who I am today.
So, of course, with every type of form of success, of course, or someone that does a good job has to go through struggle. So, where would you say was possibly the hardest moment in your semiconductor career?
The toughest and the most memorable ones that will have kept me awake up to today occasionally is the day where I walked out of Global Foundries, leaving the factory. The heart is still there. The passion is still there. Of course, the first day when you leave the company knowing that you're moving into a new chapter of your life, no matter what decision you have made, you will never forget what has happened to you 2 decades in that building, in that facility. That remains to today, my passion for that. The good thing is that where I am today, it affects and it will, help the company I once built. And that keeps me close to them. In fact, this morning I was having a meeting at the west side with Yukong. Yukong is the head of Global Foundries Singapore site. So physically, I'm still close. Just that I'm not, unfortunately, a staff there anymore. But, that's something I have to work with. But the passion is still there. The love for the company is still there. Yeah.
I think that's the unique thing about semiconductor community. I think the community, last year I took a sabbatical, I took a year off. But people were still reaching out. So, the people, I think it's the people that make this industry so special. You really make friends for life.
It's a good point. If you look at Singapore context, I was just meeting another guy yesterday. He's from Micron. And we joke about this. In Singapore context, right, everybody in the semicon company seems to come from 2 route only. One is Tech Semiconductor and the other is Chartered Semiconductor. Those who are in the factories, in the operations, it's always one of these 2. And you look at where they are today, they are all around. They are in Applied Materials, they are in Micron, they are in Global Foundries, they are in ST. They're everywhere, but the root came somehow from the same. Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. So from your perspective, Wee Seng, what would you say is then the most proudest moment in your semiconductor career?
There'll be plenty, but I think the one that I'm most proud of, and this goes back all the way to 2004 when I was just a young integration engineer. The very day we fab out the first wafer that eventually goes into Xbox 360.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's just a game console. There's nothing special about it, but having to take out that that wave. So the technology came with a collaboration with IBM. We brought the technology back. We manufactured here for Microsoft. The very first wafer that came out, that was the proudest moment. The second proudest moment was when Xbox as a physical console come up to the market. I still remember in Singapore, we went out to one of the mall to queue. Of course, there was no queue.
Oh, wow.
So I got it from Toys R Us, and Toys R Us looking at us. You want Xbox? We'll go to the storeroom to take. There's no queue because there's not much of marketing in Asia. But in the US, it was a big thing, and that was the rival of PlayStation. That was exciting. But I think to today, that one is something that will never take away from you, right? You know you're part of that journey.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, your kids, did you get them the Xbox after or no?
So I still buy Xbox Series X.
But I say that, but he was involved in this situation.
We have evolved to PlayStation, so now we are a PlayStation group. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, marvelous. So, Wee Seng, looking at the landscape then, the global semiconductor landscape, what's on your mind now? What's on your mind?
From a very positive standpoint, again,
I want to hear positive and negative. Yeah.
I'll start with negative first.
Yes.
It's chaotic. It's chaotic. It's whatever that is happening is chaotic now. Loss of uncertainty. Now that leads to the next thing, which is the one I want to say is opportunity. So I think to everyone else that are in the semiconductor hub who are dreaming of wanting to create a semiconductor hub globally in their nation, this is the time. It is an opportunity to rise. And to know that today's semiconductor ecosystem is not just manufacturing, it's everything. If you are good in mining minerals, guess what? You have a place in the semicon ecosystem. If you are good in materials, guess what? You have a place in semiconductor. If you are good in research and development, guess what? You also have a place in semicon. It's a time of opportunity now because the reconfiguration of the supply chain is happening. It's happening rapidly. And I think we will need to seize the opportunity here.
I mean, when you talk about seizing the opportunity, all the states now are in love with two letters. Obsessed with two letters. Do you know what I'm talking about? Two letters.
Yeah. Two countries.
No, two countries. Yeah,
two countries. I thought, okay.
There's one on the other one.
Yeah.
AI. Everything is AI. Even countries like where I'm from as well, where electricity is super expensive.
Correct.
Taxes are very high, so the talent's running away from the base. Also think they're dreaming of AI. The question is, I mean, of course, we've got to mention the guy's name, Jensen. He said that AI isn't going to replace jobs. It's just going to help people do their jobs better and more efficient and effective. What's your perspective? I mean, because, SSIA's one of main missions is workforce development, correct? What's your perspective of AI and the impact of AI with workforce development in semiconductor manufacturing?
So Jensen is correct. AI is part of our life today. Like it or not, we have to adopt, we need to embrace, we need to use AI in our everyday life. The true adopters of AI realize that what we could have dreamt in the past for the next 10 years is now shortened to just a year or even less with AI. So the dream of wanting to do beyond the 10 years is now an opportunity that will happen very soon. So in fact, that was also the reason why I was at the earlier meeting. We are talking about transitioning advanced manufacturing into intelligent manufacturing. So I still remember just 4 years ago, we came together as an industry and we wrote a white paper about advanced manufacturing. How do we ensure there's a standard and there's a guidance for companies to adopt advanced manufacturing, I 4.0, everything else? That is obsolete now. With AI, we are starting products in the line. Even before the material starts, we are predicting the outcome already. That's how intelligent the line has to be. This has significant impact to OEE, to cycle time, everything else. The world needs to rethink where we are now. Seize the opportunity to adopt AI and do more than what we can achieve instead of 10 years, 100 years from now, fully in. That's the opportunity.
Do you see any major threats that can come into play?
Naturally, with the improved ability now to go beyond, you talk about technologies like quantum and everything else coming to play could be sooner than later because of the help of AI, which the way I look at it is AI also is a transitioning period only. The true end game is quantum computing, quantum everything else. But with that, you have threats of cybersecurity, you have threats of technology disruption. I think the true visionaries will need to sit down now and start to look at it again from a positive stand, opportunities. What can we now develop and implement fast for humankind? I think that's
So could you give us from your knowledge of the semiconductor policies, which I know SSIA is a key driver of that in Singapore. So what are the semiconductor policies in Singapore for now?
So from a
FDI point of view.
Yeah, so from an FDI standpoint of view, Singapore is very focused on this thing called the Advanced Manufacturing 2030. So we have a roadmap for that where we are trying to put frontier investment in the space of advanced manufacturing. And semiconductor is at the front of everything. So our economic agencies like EDB has a very targeted goals to entice direct investment in this space, to enhance the facilities in this space also. So that is Singapore's current I would say official roadmap of how we want to get this done. And of course, from a manufacturing standpoint, the more manufacturing facilities, the more jobs for the people. So politicians love it, businesses love it, the ecosystem love it. But mid-long term, I think that's something Singapore Semiconductor will need to also rethink, because land is not cheap here. The workforce is not cheap. We also need to understand how do we go out the value chain. We can't be the best, the largest manufacturer in the world for semiconductor for that space. We could be maybe for advanced chipsets, for very niche, highly customized chipsets. But general manufacturing, I don't think it makes total sense. But then you take a step back, you look at what's happening now, SEZ in Johor, where we do a strong collaboration in Malaysia, where we can have factories set up in Johor, but operated or headquarters in Singapore. So the opportunity is huge with such collaboration across the regional countries. And you start to see a lot more of such work that's being done by the government. And of course, the other area that the government is very big on when it comes to policy is to support the workforce. So I mentioned earlier about attracting young talent students. We also have a very strong support from an agency called the Workforce Singapore, where we entice the mid-career people also. So people from the chemical, from aerospace who could have been unfortunately retrenched. We bring them in, we train them out. We have grants that support their pay for the next 6 months. The company focus on putting them on the job training, and then they're up and running. So we have programs that look after Singaporeans in terms of jobs. We maintain the technical group, but at the same time, we support companies to address the needs of workforce shop to meet them here.
I think during my trip here in the region, I discovered the SEZ project, and I was really surprised to know what it was. I mean, one of the interesting facts is that it's going to be double the size of Shenzhen.
This is huge. It's huge.
Double the size of Shenzhen? I mean, that's serious. I mean, for SEZ, how is SSIA going to play in this role? I'll be intrigued to know.
So today, from a government-to-government standpoint, they've spoken, they have aligned, they have already gotten this agreement going. Of course, that's level of detail. The devil's in the detail now.
Okay.
What's the implication to a particular sector running this? Will this then create more jobs for Johor, or will it lose jobs for Singaporeans? So these are things that the industry is trying to figure that out. So recently I spoke to a minister, and I think we agree that what still needs to be done. We need to now pulse the interest of the small, medium enterprises. We need to pulse the interest of the multinational companies. What does SEZ mean to expanding their businesses or restricting it if it comes in a negative form, right? So that's still being assessed. But the fundamental principles of the SEZ is what even SSIA we believe in, is the philosophy of collaboration. I think if the fundamentals are pure and correct, it's like what we have with the Malaysians, this will be a success. It's our goal to now make it a success. How? That's the question. So look on that.
So talking of the collaboration, especially with the nations, something that's come to my attention is this camaraderie of the ASEAN community now. I mean, even when I can't remember which article I was reading, but it was like talking about the next top 4 superpowers. And so the way it was like America, China, India, and I was surprised to see ASEAN as the 4th. So where's that come from? This,
I think that ASEAN it comes from many years, of course, of collaboration, but it really is a testament of the spirit of collaboration among the regional countries in ASEAN itself. And just to extend, we do have actually a paper written on my own personal account with a professor from a university to propose to the ASEAN. We got this group called the COSTI Group, what we call the ASEAN Semiconductor Industry Alliance. How do we, as a regional country, ASEAN, grow semiconductor together? We can't, as individual country, we can't be the likes of Taiwan, immediately. But what if ASEAN comes together, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, come together, and Philippines, and then we have a chance now. And not only a chance, right, we have a chance to help grow the industry globally also. So this and not only that, imagine the countries that traditionally are not part of semicon, they now have an opportunity to go inroad, like I mentioned, can be any part of the ecosystem. Or the supply chain, how do they go into that? It could be simply just workforce. It could be certain specific R&D area. So I think these are opportunities that ASEAN we are looking at. But it goes back to the point. Ultimately, every one of these ASEAN countries believe in collaboration and working together. I think that must be the essence of it.
So if we look at it from, again, geopolitical situation, I think we definitely need to talk about the two, what were they called? What's the term? The 2 elephants in the room? The 2 elephants in the room. So this new Trump administration and China, right? How or what is Singapore's stance from your perspective on both situations? Especially, I mean, and I'm talking about 2 different areas just to make sure that we don't hit any sensitive topics and we still remain, because we are neutral. We're neutral associations. We care about collaboration and innovation, but politics is politics. Trump's tariffs that are being put in place, and then of course China for China. We're also hearing that also Chinese companies are coming out of China and looking at places like Malaysia and Singapore and the Middle East to set up. I'd love to hear your feedback on both.
So firstly, from a global perspective, right? Naturally, we hope that the 2 will fall in love again. And this will all go away because we need stability among anything else. But this current, I would say, trade tension that's happening, it's not new. It happened even before COVID already, from the days of, trying to restrict Huawei. The companies has already taught themselves to the need to create a more resilient supply chain. So the work is always been ongoing. It's still reconfiguring along that line. Now, China's policy and all those things, it is really up to them. Their market is big enough. They have opportunity to do that. But they also recognize the fact that they can't do this alone. They still need the world. So I think that's something that China recognizes. The Americans also recognizes that. They know that while they can cut off or try to cut off China, the world will still need to be part of the semiconductor ecosystem. So while this is happening with loss of tension, both countries are still talking to everybody else, correct? They're still putting that front. Now, from a Singapore context, I can't speak on behalf of my government, but from SSIA standpoint, we are actually neutral to all. I mean, we still speak to our friend in China. I just met up with my friends from the embassy, US embassy last week. We are still close to them. When they have delegation, we still host them, we still talk to them. And we remain that way. We are not, manufacturing any sensitive items. We make sure we comply with what the US needs in terms of the export control and, what China needs. That will remain. But I think what is happening now is you're seeing the world themselves stepping up and say, you know what, let them, they can continue to just quarrel off, but let's see what we can do to collaborate. So over the past 2 years, UK has been very close to us. They've been flying in for our Summit platform. So last year, we talked about quantum and photonics. We have Professor Ritz from University of Southampton visiting Singapore and being one of the keynote speakers. We work closely with Canada, one of the companies in the space of quantum coming in and talk to us also. So that will continue, and I think more countries are stepping out to make that happen.
Yeah. So from a semiconductor standpoint, then, of course, nobody likes uncertainty, and this is what's going to happen in the next 4 years. We're going to have a lot of uncertainty. The challenge is that the semiconductor industry is driven by consumers.
Correct.
And if you increase, of course, if the tariffs get put in place, that means the prices of products are going to have to go up.
Correct.
Which therefore will lead to a slowdown because people don't want to spend a lot. The average salaries are still the average at the end of the day. What's your perspectives on these tariffs?
Tariff is definitely, to me, a threat
right.
to open concept of global business. It's definitely not a positive way of doing it. But we understand. We understand why the Americans are doing it. We have to respect what they decided. But I think from industry, from a business standpoint, they would also understand that, they can increase the price, their sales will drop, overall business will also drop. So there's also a huge pressure for the company to reconfigure the supply chain to get around this tariff, to make sure that things are complying with the countries, and things like that. I can see that happening very aggressively. Companies are really trying to get things qualified all around the world so that there's alternate to supply chain and everything else. And I think the business will find a way.
Yeah.
I don't believe they will entirely transfer the cost just to the consumer, because end of the day, they will still need to scale. They still need the consumers, the number of people to buy this thing to drive the technology. I think they will evolve. They will still find a way.
Yeah. Why? If we're talking about China plus one, which is of course it's all over these Harvard, Stanford business case reviews and stuff like that. Why is it very common for Singapore to be pretty much the number one priority for companies to set up here? What's the reason? What's the driver?
Actually, it's not just Singapore, but Malaysia is also quite attractive.
Malaysia is, but it seems to be that from the front end point of view,
correct,
they're choosing Singapore. Why are they not going to like Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam?
I can't think so much about why they decide to do that, but if I had to put just a generic hack onto these thoughts, firstly, we are a major trading hub, central to Asia. That could be one reason. Second reason, because we remain neutral in the way we trade and collaborate across the world. So there is no possibility of any last minute shock. But I think more importantly is also the stability of our government and the policies that's been put in place over the years. There's some level of certainty there where businesses thrive. While it is more expensive to set an operation here, but I think that certainty overcomes everything else, and that's why we remain attractive. But that said, again, companies coming here has an alternative now, looking at SEZ and everything else. Yeah, even Indonesia. Yeah,
but I think even Indonesia still don't have something set up there properly, right?
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Places like Batam.
Batam.
They have infrastructure that they have built up over the decade. And I believe Infineon has a bit there. Yeah. So more could be there, but we are in talks with one of the developer to see if we can bring some of the small medium enterprises to view the industry area also. Yeah.
I think one huge benefit is that the Singaporean government is investing heavily and it's doing the best to maintain and keep these companies here, whether we talk about Applied Materials or Micron or GF and etc. And it's actually working in favor to these companies as well to be here from a tax point of view, and even when they have to send money around the globe and etc. Why? I mean, why is the government doing this? Why is the Singaporean government so heavily involved?
I'm not too sure about the investment part of it. I don't think it's as easy as putting in investment, because the Singapore government have to look after the 20 other sectors like tourism and everything else. So I think a one-off investment into semicon is not the answer to everything else, at least from the way I interact with my government, right? But the way they look at it is for a more holistic solution for these companies. So companies are here first and foremost because we are ready with our infrastructure to train talents, for example. We have very strong research institutions that these companies are collaborating with, A-Star, NUS, NTU. There's lots of collaboration in R&D space. Naturally, with R&D establisher, the next obvious solution is production. So that's how we position ourselves. We have a solution that supports the entire ecosystem of what the company needs, rather than just what the company wants in terms of cash, for example. And I think that holistic answer is what makes Singapore attractive. I strongly believe in that. Yeah.
And of course, I mean, I see the incredible work that you do with SSIA is that you're also dealing with governments globally, right, from different regions and etc. Why do they come to you? That's an interesting question.
So I think first and foremost is because we have the access to the entire ecosystem of the regional Singapore and regional semiconductor ecosystem. But I think it's also the message that we are conveying. We are conveying to them that, look, we are ready to collaborate. Let's work together to make semicon a success, not just for your country, but for our countries and the world. I think that message resonates very well with the government. And we do advise them based on our 50 years of history. How do we make you successful? Like India recently, we signed an MOU with my counterpart in India. And between my government and India, they have a standing so-called agreement to support, to grow and help India grow their semicon sector. So India is another classic example where we work closely with them to develop not just the business, but the aspect of talent development. So we work closely to develop their young talents, but also their leaders. So these are just some, I would say, open mind that we have in terms of wanting to help the other countries.
I think you've done a great job. I mean, this is without a doubt, and it has to be emphasized. Now, let's go into the next key part that I've seen you with your work, is the push on sustainability and corporate responsibility. Of course, it's getting more important. What I want to understand is what does SSIA do with regard to its corporate members that are involved to push this forward and strengthen it? Because in certain regions around the world, they're not doing much. So I mean, they talk the talk, but the action isn't followed.
Exactly. So sustainability is real for Singapore, though we only contribute to 0.1% of the global carbon footprint. But it is real because Singapore is the center of trading hub and everything else where we attract FDIs. So we need to be real when we talk about sustainability. But the reality of the fact is that ultimately companies are talking about sustainability first and foremost is from the aspect of cost. So in the context of Singapore, energy, water, 2060, there's possibility of somebody turning off the tap for water. So SSI, when we came about, deriving this sustainability mission, we look at it not from the entire ESG framework. We focus on 4 areas only: the energy, the water, the waste management, and carbon footprint. What can we collectively do as an industry to support and drive these areas? So energy, for example, we look about how do we drive down the usage of electricity. How do we use clean energy? So you look at all the fab sale, we have solar panel. But again, solar panel is less than 1% of the overall factory usage, but we still pursue that. And if we have certain know-how, certain companies has a solution provider that helps solution a space of energy saving, we propagate that across to the other companies. So we all share the success together. And even from a policy standpoint, we ensure that our front-end fabs recycle more than 50% of their water usage. For a small island like Singapore, every drop of water matters. So we focus on that and we propagate the know-how, we propagate the solution providers into these companies. So that's what drives us, is more of a survival necessity moving into the future, because we are not a country luxurious with water and energy. We have to find a way in the future, but for now we must learn how to save also. And the biggest user of this energy and water is unfortunately semiconductor. So the companies themselves adopt these habits of wanting to save also. Yeah.
And so, okay, I love, like, again, most of the companies have these type of methodologies in place and strategies in mind. Now the question is how are you holding your corporate members accountable for these?
Unfortunately, we are not in the space of policing them and holding them accountable. But what we do is we first benchmark. So we are more in the space of partnering, wanting to partner them to achieve their net zero targets or goals. And we benchmark the best among them. And we get them to share the best solution that they have across the ecosystem to help each other out. It's more of coming from the angle rather than to police them and say, look, you don't meet the goals by what date, we are coming after you. So it's more of a collaborative mindset for this. And I think it's been showing results. Companies are taking very aggressive steps, even in a country like Singapore. I think if I believe rightly, ST Microelectronics is targeting by 2027 to hit net zero. So very aggressive roadmap. Even the government themselves, Singapore, is targeting 2030. Very aggressive, but we are going for that. Yeah.
Now, going from the sustainability and ESG matters, love to get your insights on your leadership perspectives. So, your career, you've ranged from the junior role to an executive director managing a team, and you've also been led by a few legends in the game, and you've worked alongside a few legends in the game. And I think one thing that we have as fortunate opportunities in our jobs is we get to rub shoulders with great leaders. What are the attributes that you see as vital in leadership?
I think coming out of this, or at least I'm still in the industry, the one thing that I pick up from my mentor is actually a mission statement for my own leadership style. Be a change agent. Believe in the ability to help change and transform, because the world around us moves too quickly. They're changing too quickly, especially our industry. The next second could be something else. So how agile are you in the way you manage things? So be that change agent, be that positive thinker, be the one that helps others transform successfully. That's always been my mindset, even in my days in Chartered Semiconductor and also Global Foundries. That's how I help my team discover, the ability to transform. And coincidentally, when coming to SSIA, that's exactly our mission statement, to help the industry transform, to thrive. So, to me, that was one of the most important attribute. Of course, as definition of leadership, there are many things that goes into leadership. But at least a self-reflection that I look at is just the change agent statement, where nothing is fixed, nothing is status quo.
Yeah.
We are forever changing. How fast can you change and help others to change? Yeah.
I mean, if you had a magic wand and you could just wave it and you could make a change, what would it be?
It has this magic wand and made a change.
Yeah.
From an industry standpoint,
Yes.
I'll make Singapore the most major hub of semiconductor industry, but not because it is for the economy only, but it's because we have the ability now to help the others rise up together globally and ultimately for the betterment of mankind. So no selfish reason, not because this country has the technology and they keep it for themselves and everyone else cannot be part of it. Everybody must be part of it. And that's how you meet the demand of the world. Yeah.
Do you think that is a realistic dream?
I need to find that one.
Yeah.
It is not impossible. Think positive.
Well, sometimes you've got to think outside the box. Sometimes, right? You have to dream. You have to dream. Wee Seng, on your side of things, I think that it's a vital question to ask you is, what's next for SSIA?
The most important aspect of or my mission for SSIA now is to find a successor. There needs to be continuity beyond my time for SSIA. So the very first day I stepped into SSIA, I've told my then chairman, and it has been my mission ever since then to identify the next potential or potentials in the team that really can go beyond me. And that's what we need to do for an organization. It cannot be just Wee Seng equals to SSIA, SSIA equals to Wee Seng. It's to go beyond me. So I know this is something that is unexpected. Most of people imagine me to have something in the technological space or in the investment space, but it's about succeeding me and to ensure that the legacy I have in place will continue, but will be better into the future. Yeah.
So connecting that mission, what's your purpose?
My purpose is first and foremost to be the best father in the world. That to me is the number one mission. My success is when my kids are successful in their life. That box has to be checked first and foremost. Everything else is about helping the others, the friends around you, the partners around you, to be successful. If you are capable of being successful, you make sure that the ones around you are also successful. And ultimately, that last point, the point I mentioned earlier, is to help people transform, and help organizations transform, help people move up, from wherever they are.
Yeah. Is there? I mean, from your side of things, let's say, for example, the Wee Seng now. I usually ask this always. The Wee Seng now. What would he say to the Wee Seng if you could go back in time? You just come out of university after the bet that you just did, and you're just about to go into Chartered.
Yeah.
What would you say to the Wee Seng now? With the brain and the experiences that you've had in life and everything now, and you could click and you're with the Wee Seng that just about to enter Chartered for his first day, what would you say to him?
Keep doing what you're doing passionately, follow that, but marry the girl you love faster. It was career first for me, so I married quite late into my career, which is why...
It's the same woman, right? I hope so, yeah.
It's just all from then. I've been in love with her ever since, I met her. Marry her earlier. Do that first.
Okay. Have kids earlier, would you say?
Earlier.
Yeah.
Good also, yeah. I mean, my two kids are my best friends. It's like they're the best things ever.
Yeah. I think, it's quite interesting you mentioned the kids in this situation because, when I basically, before I made the decision to take my sabbatical, I would ask people, I would say to them, especially the ones that were close to retire. I mean, a lot of our friends now are just retiring back to back, right? And I asked them, I said, I asked them this question. I'm like, what's your biggest regret? And they all say the same thing. They all say, I wish I spent more time with my kids when they were young.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I heard that also from many of my friends. There's one who recently retired. Reflecting back, that's the one thing he missed and can never take back anymore. And, so yes, those are lessons learned and,
But I think, hats off to them. I mean, because when you look at their lives as service engineers, even to their VP roles, I mean, I look at I travel a lot on the job, but our members and sponsors, I mean, these guys are traveling like 70% of the year or 80% of the year. And I just find it absolutely mind-boggling. That's commitment.
Correct. No, there's lots of respect for these people. But if they have family, that's where you can feel the challenges that they will face. Yeah.
Well, the two thing is, there's two things here. Wee Seng is not only is it a family matter, but it's also a health matter.
That's
Going across these different parts of the world, you are killing yourself. And I'm not sure you've seen it, but it's quite sad. Like every year, when I'm hearing someone's gone from the industry, and most of them they've gone from heart attacks most of the time, and it's because of the intensity of the role. You have the high stress, which is not only connected to the job, but also the high stress connected to doing the job. like traveling all these different countries, different time zones, poor sleep, poor diet, airplane food isn't the most healthiest, and then you're just, it's intense. It's really, really intense. I see this as a massive problem in our industry.
It is a problem, but you see, despite these challenges, they're still doing that.
They're still doing it.
So the passion part overcomes everything else. It's something that we can appreciate. We know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
But you're right, this is a massive problem. And hopefully things will improve.
Will change. Yeah. I want to then, of course, Wee Seng, it's been a marvelous discussion. I knew this was going to be an incredible discussion having you on the show. But what would you say from your side of things? Is there any final statements that you have that you would like to say to, I don't know, maybe like the another Wee Seng out there, for example, that is pondering whether to come into the semiconductor industry?
Yeah. So the one message I will convey is this, and it's a reflection of how I got through in this industry. I love what I do. I continue to love what I do. 2 decades passed into my career, regardless of which area I've been through in semiconductor. And this is true, not just for myself, but for all my friends that has been in the semiconductor industry. Yes, there'll be occasion where you may have the wrong supervisor. You may have the wrong job. You may have fallen down in your job and just hit everything out of it. But those are minorities. Majority of them love what we do. And I hope that, people out there, the young talents who are considering a career, explore semiconductor from end to end. Look at our entire ecosystem. You're bound to find an area that you will love. It's not necessarily the manufacturing or the chip. It could be the testing. It could be the design. It could be the chemicals that you want to play with, to help in the process of semiconductor. It's a slew of them. Explore, get educated and know more about it, and hopefully join the semiconductor industry to follow the legacy. Is no more our time.
Yeah.
It is the future that has to come in to take over what we have done in the past and hopefully be better than what we've done in the past. So, yeah.
That's I've made a prediction. The prediction seems to be happening much earlier than I expected. But Wee Seng, do you see, like I'm seeing, I really believe that the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a whole change of people, of leaders.
I truly believe in that.
Yeah, all the top. Well, my friends that I've known for I've been in the game for 15 years in semiconductors. Just in semiconductors. Everyone's changed. Everyone's retiring. Everyone's leaving jobs. And I'm pondering in my head, who's going to replace these individuals?
You'll be surprised. These people who have retired, they have done the job. The next up and rising, they're ready. They have to step up and we'll soon know them. But it's a reflection of us also. We are reaching the end. To a certain extent, I'm going to miss this industry if I ever leave it.
Yeah.
But I really wish that the next generation that comes in will bring this industry forward, not just Singapore, but globally, and make the world a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I already feel sad in certain situations because some of them I owe sincere gratitude to, because as you mentioned, they helped.
Correct.
To open the doors to where we are today, which is actually a question I should ask you actually, is from your career, who are the individuals that helped you? Who opened the doors for you?
Actually, there are many, but I will say that there are a few that went above and beyond. One person that I will always remember for life because she's my best friend to today. She's my mentor. Her name is Sim Swee. She was one of the founding group of UTech, and StatGPAC. She was more from the OSAC group, but she was in Chartered at one point, and she became my mentor. I still remember the very first day she called me and said, you've been identified as a high potential. We need to meet every week. I was thinking, oh my God, there goes my, it's like a burden. But 1 year into that, that conversation that we have every week, she's not giving me a solution to things, but she's opening my eyes to another aspect of it, another angle that I've never seen before. She remains a mentor up to today. It's almost 20 years now. I would say that she's been my guiding star all these years, and she has shaped who I am. In the sense, the change agent concept idea was something that she mooted, and where I am today. Of course, along the way, I have many bosses, many supervisors, many self-declared mentors, I would say, but every one of them have left something behind, and that remains true to today. Yeah.
So when you talk about finding a successor and all of these elements, what is the legacy you'd like to leave?
I like to leave behind a legacy that promotes my belief, one that talks about collaborative, community, one that talks about partnership, one that talks about success for all, but more importantly, one that talks about myself, having to transform them to be successful, and one day they come back and do the same to others. So that's, you ask me, that is the one legacy I hope will be left behind.
Wee Seng, thank you very much for this marvelous discussion. I hope everyone out there that's listening to this gets sincere inspiration, motivation. And for those that want to reach out to Wee Seng, LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is the most effective way. We have a tradition on the podcast, actually, Wee Seng, is the last person leaves a question for the next person. And
who's the next person?
Well, we actually kind of asked this question during this podcast. But the question that was left for you is, how will you prepare for Trump's administration?
How I prepare for Trump's administration?
Yeah.
Nothing different.
No.
Nothing different. It will still be the same as how we've been running things.
Yeah.
But we need to be sensitive to his policies, read beyond what is declared, but more importantly, be informed. I think that's a key thing, because one challenge with Trump's administration, even from the past, is how the mainstream media from both sides of the spectrum will twist and turn the story until you totally get a very different story together.
Yeah.
Be very informed about what he said and collaborate and verify that with your partners from the US.
Yeah. I think. Do you know what? I had this discussion in China, just to wrap this up. Actually, is Trump accelerated China's semiconductor ecosystem. It's a double-edged sword, actually. That from 2016 they went gun-ho. They were like, all right, we'll see if we can do it ourselves.
Exactly.
But yeah, like you mentioned in the podcast early on, is with every challenge or threat, there's always an opportunity.
Correct.
And we all have to grab the opportunity. Wee Seng, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the Semiconductor Leadership Podcast. A big fan of yours, so I wish you all the best with SSIA, and I'm sure there's a lot of magic yet to come. And again, thank you for your... the fact that Wee Seng actually talks about collaboration, he doesn't talk the talk, he actually walks the walk. So thank you for your collaboration with us as our association, and looking forward to doing a lot of magic with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wee Seng.